Thank you for coming back after the lunch. I hope so you enjoy the lunch and you are full of energy for our last part. We have with us Mr. Neil Betteridge. I know that the majority, you know Neil. He's a very friendly person to us, to our community, and he's going to discuss, to show us and present us, sorry, but I lost it, the value of achieving remission in inflammatory conditions. And we can hear you, Neil. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Andri, and thanks to Mary and everybody involved for once more involving myself, but the Global Alliance for Patient Access in your meeting. And congratulations already on a fantastic start to this meeting. I know people are still coming in. People always have to be dragged off the streets before my presentations. I'm used to it. It's fine. Yeah, I'm going to be talking to you today about remission. But I first want to introduce the organisation. And perhaps, although there are a lot of friendly faces I've known a long time, for those who haven't met me, I have a background in working in European patient advocacy for a long time now, about 20 years, and I was one of Elsa's predecessors, Vice President and Chair of EULAR PARI. But I'm speaking at this meeting in my capacity as the Senior Director for the European Alliance for Patient Access, excuse me, which is the European division of the Global Alliance for Patient Access, or GAfPA. So sorry about the acronyms, but EAfPA is the European network and GAfPA is the global one. And it's, I've been with GAfPA for 10 years now and worked with several of you over the years. It's a very simple model. It's an international platform for patient representatives and healthcare professionals and other stakeholders to come together and discuss policy actions, but not just to have a nice discussion, purposefully in order to work out what actions have to follow, what can be done via advocacy to make positive changes happen for whatever disease area we happen to be working in. So we typically invite stakeholders to come together. Someone like myself will facilitate a discussion for maybe all day or a few hours, and we'll produce reports which then we can provide with you as the real experts to use, if you wish, in your advocacy work. So it's quite a simple model, but it seems to be quite effective, which is why I'm still doing it after 10 years. None of us want to waste our time, right? Life is too short. So although we happen to be talking about rheumatic diseases here today, and that happens to be my background also, GAfPA is an organisation that works across disease states. And as you can see, probably just about see, our work covers all the major disease areas like, cancer, neurology and so on. But also we do a lot of work in rare diseases because that's often, as you know, where patient organisations need extra help because it's so much more challenging when you're looking at rare diseases. And our programming has often been in this part of the world. So one of the photos here shows us convening a pan-European meeting in Brussels outside the European Parliament. But there in the middle is a figure you will know well, most of you, Marios Koulamos, which came from a visit that we made to Cyprus a few years ago when the National Health Service was going through major changes, and we worked together to try to ensure that patient voices were an important part of the new look NHS in Cyprus going forward. And that photo, I think, was from a press conference. So we're very flexible about the way we work. But specifically for this presentation, I do want to talk about a very current and forward-moving piece of work looking at remission in inflammatory rheumatic diseases. Now, as I'm sure you know, the definition of remission is something in rheumatology which can be a little bit controversial. So you might get EULAR and the ACR arguing about what level of disease activity constitutes remission. We're not coming at it from that scientific perspective specifically. we're approaching this from the policy perspective. So it's really important to get everybody on the same page, to have a common understanding of what we're talking about. So for our purposes, remission is simply the absence of disease, signs and symptoms. And we'll let the scientists and researchers argue about the more precise definitions. But what we want here is people with conditions like rheumatoid arthritis and axial spondyloarthritis and other inflammatory conditions to get optimal treatment, not just good treatment. It's great if you're getting good treatment, but it's much better if you're getting optimal treatment. And that really is at the heart of this. And we all know that remission is not going to be possible for everybody, but it's our belief, having listened to you and others in this area, that the important thing is to strive, to try to get to that point. And if you can't reach remission, the patient should at least be supported to achieve the lowest possible disease score. Because we know if you do that, that can bring about so many benefits in terms of quality of life. And indeed, I think when Andrea opened up today and she described, the impact that RMDs have on people's lives, we know this, so you don't need me to repeat it. But it is important to note that there is a good level of evidence showing that actually taking that step towards remission brings significant benefits. This is not a trivial thing, this is a significant thing, especially for the person, the patient living with the condition, as you know. And secondary to that, but importantly also, especially when speaking to policymakers, politicians, media, it's important to note there's also good evidence that doing this brings about savings to the health service and to wider society. So those of you who are, like me, old enough to remember the time before biologics, we know that there's been tremendously good progress for treating inflammatory conditions in the last 25 years, which is fantastic. It absolutely is fantastic without any doubt. But is it possible that perhaps treating rheumatologists and perhaps patients who are not as informed as they should be, maybe they're settling for second best and thinking that if a treatment is working quite well, let's just continue. Whereas perhaps better is possible. And that's really what we're trying to look at here. So we've been listening to those voices, your voices, many times, to realise the importance of doing some work on this. So to understand this more deeply, we convened our first meeting. GAfPA convened a global meeting that was held in Brussels in November 2023, and we had scientific evidence presented about what remission is and how it can help people, and also economic evidence presented to show the savings that also result. So we wanted to understand this agenda more deeply, and also to find out if organisations, not only in Europe, but around the world, would be interested in actively taking this forward. Because GAfPA isn't going to be the advocate, it's you guys who do that hard work. So this has got to work for you to be of real benefit. And again, we never have meetings just to have a meeting, we always want concrete outcomes. And at the end of this meeting, we developed a call to action. So we looked throughout the discussion, I'll mention the call to action in a moment. We discussed throughout this meeting just how concrete and how significant the benefits were, including the economic benefits. If you're achieving optimal care and remission perhaps, then you're likely to use hospitals less, for example. That's a major cost saving. It also, intrinsically, for the person, given, as we know, inflammatory conditions are systemic and not just about joints, we know that this has a positive impact too on the propensity to develop comorbidities, or for those comorbidities to be less damaging. And as well as that, of course, if you're better supported, you're more independent, your well-being is better, you can have a family life, you can go to work, you can pay taxes and contribute to the economy. But it seems, from everything that you guys and others have told us over the years, that some patients are slipping through the net. They're not getting that multidisciplinary, holistic care and in particular that individualised care that really we deserve, you deserve. And scientifically, there's a whole big agenda, isn't there, about personalised medicine. And at the level of the molecules, that's great. People are starting to get, and will in future, get more personalised medicine, which is tremendous. But what about individualised care? That conversation with the rheumatologist or the specialist nurse about self-management, about providing supported self-management, which fits so closely with the topic we're looking at over these 2 days here around mental health as well as physical well-being. So in the absence of individualised care and, shared decision-making, which we all know is a good thing, but we all know doesn't happen anywhere near enough, in the absence of those things, people are not necessarily having the discussions that would lead to them getting the optimal care for them as an individual. And this is what we're trying to address. So the call to action, the primary call to action from that initial global meeting was this, that healthcare systems should develop and prioritise. And there's a sense of urgency here. If nobody treats this urgently, nothing is going to change. So we've got to make some noise if we want anything to happen, in my opinion. Policies which pursue the support the pursuit of remission, and most importantly, enable better quality of life for patients, but also bring those economic benefits. We think that's a good message to take to policymakers. It's something that is possible, it's something that should be done, and there are financial benefits. I think I missed, did I skip? Yeah, right. So that was quite broad. So we wanted to have 2 or 3 other messages beneath that we hoped will develop advocacy work and provide extra messaging that you can use with policymakers and journalists, etc. And one of these addresses the multidisciplinary team. We all know that a lot of conversations that people with RMDs have about their well-being don't always go on with rheumatologists. It often is the physiotherapist or the pharmacist or the occupational therapist, the psychologist, thinking about our mental health theme for the meeting as well. So it's important that those people are educated and have the resources to identify and appropriately support people with RMDs who perhaps are not getting that optimal care which you have a right to expect. In all of this, the patient experience has to be primary, and so we also want to ensure that healthcare professionals recognise that and that they understand the value of providing supported self-management. Everyone in this room is a big advocate for self-management, but we all know there needs to be some support for that as well. It's not just leaving someone to themselves, is it? It's about providing them with the resources to empower them to self-manage effectively. And then finally, technology. We heard from an Australian rheumatologist about the way he uses remote care. And there was a consensus in the discussion at the end that for those patients who are stable, who are doing optimally, they may actually not want or need to travel maybe a long way to have a face-to-face meeting when they think they've got nothing going on. But for those patients who are newly diagnosed or maybe having a flare or for whom the treatment is not working so effectively right now, they're the people that should be prioritised for face-to-face meetings to have those individualised discussions about changing treatment or more self-management, whatever the individual needs and wants. So there are technological opportunities. Why aren't we using them more often? I'm speaking to a room full of advocates. I'm not going to tell people how to do advocacy. But in summary, we know that you need a good rational argument about why this issue is important and why it should be addressed. We know you need the human touch. If people hear about 100,000 people having a hard time, it's difficult to somehow conceptualize. When you see one person suffering, it has an impact, right? And policymakers need to be reminded of this through personal patient voices quite often, all the stuff you guys are so brilliant at. And then thirdly, and just as importantly, evidence. You need the evidence to support your arguments and your impactful narrative. So that was what we thought was lacking here. We've got a good argument, but have we got the evidence? Now, we didn't and don't have the resources to commission large-scale scientific research or even any kind of research, but we did hear from so many people that there is a bit of evidence here and a bit of evidence there that demonstrates the efficacy of pursuing remission and the socio-economic benefits if you achieve it more often. So we thought, why don't we at least pull together all the existing data and evidence that we can find that's already out there, it's published, it's validated, but no one's actually brought it into one place to support all of the arguments that we were making in our original white paper, policy paper, which contained the call to action. Surely if we're going to be successful with our advocacy, we need the evidence. So we felt it was our duty at GAfPA to provide or to identify and publish that evidence. So we did. We asked Open Health, very good organisation, spent a lot of time doing really an amazing and extensive amount of desk research, basing their search on the narrative in our policy paper. That's thing about evidence for reduced hospital visits, for more workplace productivity, for quality of life, all the things I've already mentioned briefly. And they put together a document which we launched on the day when some of us met in Vienna at the EULAR Congress earlier this year, June the 13th. And that was published then in English, and both the original white paper and this second document with the evidence, and they belong together. So the arguments in the first document, the evidence in the second, so they speak to each other. That has since been translated into a wide range of languages spoken within Europe, including Italian and Spanish, and some others, which I'll come on to in a moment. For example, Bulgarian. So since we published these materials, we've been talking to some of the national groups we're in contact with, and that's been fantastic. And some of you have come to me to talk about it, and that's great. And please, after today, if you're interested, please come and talk to me or email me anytime. One example here is we heard from the Association of Patients Active in Healthcare, EAfPA, in Bulgaria. And Bori, I know your organisation is a member and actively involved here, I think. Yes. Working together. Okay, right. And we are still now in discussions about how these documents we published on remission might help patient advocacy in Bulgaria, talking to policymakers. And I believe there's a general election coming up, and therefore all of these things, it may be a good time to move things on. So we translated it not just in the usual languages, French, German, Spanish, but also into Bulgarian to support the advocacy there, which is great. And, watch this space to find out how that all develops. CIPLA, thank you so much again, doing amazing things. Susie Macri asked me at the end of the EULAR meeting if we could have the materials in Greek, and I said, well, you need to tell me first how you would use them. Half an hour later, I was saying, okay, stop, that's fine, we'll do it. Such an amazing sense of where this could go if it was in the local language. And as you can see, through the work of Andrew and everybody else at CIPLA, we're seeing a lot of stuff going on, using the materials to address policymakers and so on, which is superb and exactly what was intended. We heard from one of the Norwegian groups, patient organisations we work with, who have already put something in their members' magazine, and they're using it as a basis of a survey to find out what people in Norway think about this whole issue about remission. So again, we were persuaded to go the extra mile and translate into Norwegian too. As you can see, this is not just a European thing, this really is happening globally. And it gives us at GAfPA the feeling that there's an appetite to do more here, which is what we really want to do next year. So just like the EULAR meeting, where I think we had 50 people in the room over a lunchtime in an amazingly busy week. Thank you everyone again for giving your time. And we had similar meetings just prior to that in Colombia, alongside the PANLAR meeting for Latin American RMD advocates. And then just last month in Singapore, we called together stakeholders, their patient groups from Asia Pacific. So we had people from Japan and Singapore and China and Malaysia and Taiwan. Very interesting politics to some of that. And again, really passionate, enthusiastic, wanting to do something about this topic. Therefore, that's kind of where we are right now. I've been delighted to see that there's so much energy and enthusiasm to want to do something on this topic. So we feel it's our duty to try and do more, keep this moving, because we're not going to get these things fixed quickly, right? It's going to take sustained effort over time, like any long-term advocacy goals. But we're committed to doing that. We're evaluating all these meetings now, all the things that we're going to hear, things you might say in the next few minutes or over dinner tonight or something, and seeking support. And this work to date has been sponsored by AbbVie, but all parties would love it if this could go multi-sponsor. That just makes it better. It means you can do more stuff, and we want to do more stuff, right, to make things happen, more good stuff. So that's where we are. Very happy to take comments, questions now, and obviously we can chat informally over the next 2 days as well. But wanted to bring you up to date, and anybody who wants to get involved in any way, just speak to me anytime. Thank you very much indeed for your attention.
So, thank you, Neil. As you've seen, in Cyprus, we are trying to do our best with this topic. Do you have any questions for Neil? Yes, Sina.
Thank you, Neil, for a very interesting presentation. I have just one question. How did the medical world react to your definition of remission?
So I missed some of that, Sina. Sorry, I think it's the acoustics.
How did the medical profession react to that definition of remission? Thank you.
Well, what I've always found is if you gather 100 medical professionals together in a room, 100 of them want things to change and to be better. They've all got the same problems and they want the same improvements. There's probably only 1 or 2 out of the 100 who understand what that process would look like to get there. In other words, people who understand policy. So medical professionals who only think about science want to have an argument about the definition of remission. But to be honest, I don't care, because the ones that will make a difference here are the ones who are going to be interested in the process around advocacy and about making positive change happen, which is what, for me, advocacy is. So there's a theory of change management that it's like a comet, and if you want things to change, you work with the head of the comet, because that's what's pulling everything else. And those guys behind can choose to either drop off or join in, and normally they join in. So we're working with the willing, and we've got a good number of healthcare professionals really putting time and energy and resources into this. So we're working with them. The rest will learn later that it's a good thing.
Any other questions? No. Thank you, Neil. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
For your time and for your efforts to be with us today. So now we have a little bit stretch with Stalo. Stalo is from Cyprus. I think everybody knows her. And she's doing voluntarily stretching. Follow Stalo. Breathe. crack, crack. And opposite. Hands up. And to your toes. Cross. Office.
It's very simple to do it. Very simple. Okay? And the other one is to put our hands back and try to connect. No, the point is to try.
It's not an attention.
And then the other side. Then the other side. Then down. Now push in the front. Like, yeah, wall again.
Yes, like a wall, yes, indeed. This exercise is especially for people with arthritis.
Do you know anybody with arthritis?
Another very important, and also this exercise assists my husband who has MS. It's very important this exercise, and especially my husband has MS. You know what is MS, multiple sclerosis, and he feels like give power in his fingers. It's like a coordination also, huh? It's not only make an exercise and coordination, yes. Try your arms to be at the same level. Elbow. Okay. And also I would like, let's finish, but I would like also to thank you. Thank actually, I'm here with you, and I said to a lot of people here that I feel like family. I want to keep it like this, family. Okay?
Thank you, Stalo. So, We are now finishing our day in this room, okay? And we will go for our visit to Valletta and St. John Co-Cathedral. Our meeting point is the entrance of the hotel. Please be there at 3:10 because 3:15 the bus is leaving. So 3:10, I want you to be there. And don't be late because the cathedral will be open only for us and they are waiting for us and we have to be there on time. And I would like to inform you for tomorrow, okay? Tomorrow we are starting at 9:45 prompt with a photo. So I would like to ask you to be all here in 9:45 to make a photo, our family photo. Please have with you this thing that you have in your bags, okay? It's gonna be two shots, one for Agora and one for Cypler. I will explain you tomorrow, okay? And we are starting the conference at 10, so please be here at 9:45 tomorrow morning. Thank you all.